Welcome back to episode 3 of the Low Finer Things. If you've been here since episode 1 or episode 2, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. We're happy to be here. Whitley, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be here.
Cal?
Oh, I'm doing just splendid. Nothing but a sunny afternoon.
It's sunny and windy here. I'm doing as good as can be expected, I guess you could say, which is usually like pretty good. If you know me, I'm usually pretty good. So what's new and exciting?
How rude of me. I didn't even ask
Actually,
how you
I'm
were.
accustomed
How
to it.
rude.
It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. Things are going great though. I like how people have taken to the podcast. I like the direction that it's heading. The feedback that we've gotten from people has been great. It's been well received. I had somebody tell me the other day that listening to me made them bricked up and that they could fall asleep to the sound of my voice. And I wasn't...
My little
That's
sister said the
beautiful.
same thing.
About me or about you?
The voice thing. I fall asleep listening to your voice.
It's a compliment that I've never gotten before. Usually, like when people are listening to me, I'm screaming comms playing Call of Duty, and it's not the same tone. But the compliment was appreciated and well received regardless. I thought Cal maybe had the ASMR voice. Like, he always sounds so calm and relaxed, whereas I have a tendency to be rather animated sometimes. Depending on what we're talking about, I can get very intense, but I like it.
Everyone's got their place.
Whitley, you had a really, really great idea at the end of last week's episode, off recording, that would make for a really great episode this week.
Yes. Well, we kind of teased it, Chop Chop, the art of sampling. And I thought, just like right away to do kind of an episode around what sampling is and how it contributes to the unique sound and the vibe that is lo-fi music as a genre. What do you guys think, Cal?
It's just so influential in general, honestly. Like, it's far as not even just lo-fi, just hip-hop in general, things like that. Like, sampling has created such a beautiful thing, from cassette sampling onto cassettes and things like that, sampling from records, vinyl. It's just, it makes me very happy.
You're right with the reach of like sampling and the genres that it's reached, and like the culture around sampling itself is so intense, it's so deep. Like, this could be a whole series, honestly, like if you really wanted to like deep dive how far sampling really goes.
It's come so far as well. Like, you look back and you watch some of the documentaries, or you listen to guys like Q-Tip talk about how they used to do like the pause tapes, where you would record, say, a drum break on like a dual cassette recorder, bring it back, rewind it, find a loop, record it over that, pause it, bring it back, find a chop from another sample, put it over top of that. Like, the pause tapes are an art form in themselves. I've never once tried it. I think it's a little bit over my head. I've watched a couple of videos on it, but
me too.
It's actually insane. And you go back and you see other producers to it. You got Pete Rock, Premier, Dilla, Q-Tip, like I mentioned, and now it's as easy as literally just like dropping it into your DAW and loading up something like Serato Sample. But we'll get there later on in this episode. It's just so universal now, like Cal said. Like, you can hear it in pop songs, in R&B songs. It's not just strictly hip-hop or lo-fi. It's literally everywhere at this point.
For sure. And like sampling, like samples have inspired entire genres. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with the Amen break. Like, that's a pretty iconic sample. Like, that inspired like the whole genre of jungle and even drum and bass.
I honestly did not know that.
Yeah, like, you're familiar with that, right?
I mean, I've listened to some of that uppity stuff.
But like the Amen break sample.
No.
You don't know what I'm talking about? Oh my goodness.
No. I'm
Crooked
feeling
Foot,
like
do
I
you know
don't.
what it is?
I've heard, but I don't know if I've ever explored it.
Really? Okay, like, you guys need to check that out.
There's so many samples that are
So influential.
I was gonna say iconic, but yeah, like influential would be the word to use. Like you look at how many times something like Funky Drummer has been sampled. It's on damn near everything. The theme from Shaft.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
But once again, you've heard it how many times?
In so many different ways.
Everywhere. So you start looking at things that are like the most sampled, the most revered, the most influential. Like there's so many things from, like you said, the Winstons, the James Browns. Impeach the President is another one. Like that break has been used so many times on so many different things that it's still even used today because it sounds so good on so many things. Shout out to the homie. I was ragging on him not too long ago because that's a break that he commonly uses because it sounds good on everything. And I apologize for sample snitching. If you do your research on these things, people have heard it anyway and they know. But it's so damn good that you can get away with using it time and time again.
That's immediately beautiful. You had to get time after time shooting through my head because of that.
Well, I'm kind of curious, like, just for each of you. I'm gonna target Cal right away here.
Come at me, bro.
How do you in like your Kappa style lo-fi approach sampling in your own music making process?
I didn't make a single, like, I didn't start using samples honestly until like 4 6 months ago. Maybe 6 months ago.
Last October, Owl and the Orca.
Yeah, that was when I started using samples. But like before that, I was making everything up myself. But now for what I use is honestly half the time I go down to the record store and I search through the cheap jazz bin and I can spend $15, come back with 5 6 records, and I just randomly needle drop on things to see what happens. Like I'll get the MPC set up for record as soon as sound hits, and I just go to the first song, drop the needle random spot on it, record for 30 seconds to a minute, and that's what I have. And I have to figure out what to make from there.
You just gotta watch the grooves on the record, man. It might save you some time.
Right?
There's if you're looking at the record and the grooves are thicker, there's more going on. But
Yep.
once they get thinner,
Makes sense.
there's commonly like a break or something, whether it just be like drums, maybe there's no drums and it's specifically instruments, maybe it's a bass line, but you can tell by looking at the grooves of the record where there could potentially be samples.
Ooh, that's beauty. I like to just play random lately. Like literally no set anything to see what
True.
happens.
Q-Tip is like an OG at that shit. Like he'll just do like the needle drop samples.
I'll make my roommate do it sometimes.
That's fire.
I'll just be like, pick a spot in the record. I find it more challenging, and it puts you in a box, but it also makes you break the box.
I was gonna say yes, it puts you in a box, but it also takes you out of one because it's forcing you to do something in a different box than you normally would have.
Well, God, if you put me on the TrackLab website, I'll be there for 3 hours before I find something. Because, this is good, but then the next thing's really good. And you just, oh my God, it never ends.
There's so much on that site.
Like, what are some of the techniques you're using to manipulate and transform those kind of samples into something new?
A lot of the time I've been playing with like just letting the record play as I'm listening to it, and then I'll start slowing the record down with my finger. Like a couple songs off of my last release where you could tell the record got really weird and wobbly, and I was just playing with it with my hand to add a little bit of something
Are
different.
you fucking serious?
Beside that,
I thought, like straight up, like the warp effects on your last tape on some of those, like they were so aggressive. Like I thought you used the SP for those, but you did that by hand?
yeah.
That's crazy. That's fucking crazy.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, I was just like, what happens if I start this like long notes playing, and what if I just slow it down with my hand and then let go?
Just
'Cause,
like
I don't know,
turntablist
something to
style
do.
almost.
It is, and like we all know that if you apply pressure to a record, yes, it slows it down, and it does change the pitch of it, but to do it in a way where it doesn't necessarily affect the overall timing of the record and it stays on beat and you're still able to pitch shift it afterwards if you choose to, is crazy in itself, man. My hat goes off to you. That's G shit.
I'm always trying to learn something new, man. I have the technology. Why not abuse it a little bit? I mean, it's a $2 record. Worst case scenario, it breaks.
Well, like really, and second to that is, you might start to wear out the needle on your record player a little bit sooner. Well, what's a cartridge cost? You can get a 3-pack on Amazon for like $10.
Right? It's no big deal whatsoever.
In the name of creativity, I would say that it's worth it.
Always got to test your luck.
Well, what about you, Crooked Foot? What are some techniques that you use to manipulate and transform samples? Or like, can you walk us through your sampling workflow? And from like finding samples or like incorporating them into your beats?
Prior to switching exclusively to the SP404, I mean, if you're listening to this and you've watched me create on Twitch before, you kind of have an idea what it looks like as far as the process goes. But one of my favorite things to do would be sample it into the SP, apply my effects there, get it a little bit dusty, a little bit grainier than maybe normal, bring it into FL Studio, and then kind of chop it up, take the loop that I created, run it back into the SP, change it up a little bit, add something to it, manipulate it some, bring it back into FL, and then make my beat around that, and then run it back into the SP again, apply effects to the whole beat, record it back into FL Studio, bounce it as a wave, upload it to Bandcamp. Now it's a little bit different. Like now I'm working exclusively with the SP. So what I'll typically do is I'll record it in the way that I like it. Sometimes I'll record it in a little bit hot, which means like the volume to a level where it's almost peaking. And then I'll apply my effects to it. I'll find a chunk that I like. I will pitch shift it up or down depending on what I'm feeling that day. Run it through, chop it, throw my drums on it, resample it with some effects, some sound effects, the 303 compression, the cassette sim.
Oh my god, it's good.
Dude, like that thing is nasty. And one of the things that I've been doing recently is like I'll run it through the 303 compression lightly to kind of like a medium gauge, and then I'll resample it at a heavier compression setting just to double it up and really make the drums kind of duck a little bit. I don't like none of that clean sounding lo-fi. Like I do to listen to, but when I'm creating, I want to see how dirty I can get something before I say, nah, that's too much.
I feel that lately, man. The one thing I've really loved about the MPC versus the SP for stuff is this one beautiful thing called Mother Ducker. Toss that on the kick. Yeah, literally toss it on the kick for the input, and then as you're making your song, add Mother Ducker to the end of everything, and everything gets that nice duck when the kick hits.
So it's essentially a sidechain plugin is what it is.
Yep. It's just got a cute little duck on it, and it's called Mother Ducker, so I love it.
That's fair. I was speaking of funny looking plugins, like the sausage fattener plugin on FL Studio was always great. Neither here nor there at this moment, but yeah, like I used to throw that on some of my basses just to give it a little bit of oomph, with a little bit of distortion as well, and then kind of like duck it under the main sample. Sounded like fire sometimes.
What do you like to use for your basses?
Like when I'm making a bass line, or in what regard? Typically,
are you more of like the synth bass kind of sound, or like a real bass kind of sound?
No. I like a just like an absolutely like greasy sub bass. Like I love a deep sounding sub bass. There have been instances where I'll use a regular sounding bass. Like there was a couple of bass plugins that I used, like Ample Bass was really good, and there was another free bass plugin that the name has kind of escaped me right now that I would use, but like I don't like the natural electric bass sounding. Like I like the way that they play, but I don't like the way that some of them sound. Like you get kind of like that twangy sound that's like you can hear the strings move, and that's cool on certain tracks. I myself very much prefer just like a deep sounding sub bass. So sometimes what I would do is take those plugins, get my bass sounding the way that I wanted, and then just drop it an octave or two.
Oh, dirty.
And then it sounds really dirty, and then you get that muddy, like just like you have sent this too far down into the depths of hell sounding bass. And so then you just cut out like some of the mids and some of the lows and take a little bit of that away, and then boom, you're good. But sometimes also too, like I'll just duplicate the sample, take out all the highs, juice the lows, filter out the mids,
beauty.
add like one of my favorite things to do would be to like add like the R-Bass plugin from Waves back when I had it, and like throw that on there to bring some of those lows up even more. Serato sample again too, like I would take the sample and say like it was in A minor, and then what I would do is I would duplicate that same thing, filter out all the highs, all the mids, but then I would take it from that A minor and I would drop it down even more semitones. So once it got down to like A minor again, it was rumbling.
I was gonna say that would sound very dirty.
It definitely can, but that was a go-to because I have no formal like education or practice in music theory or anything of that nature. So filtering out the highs from the sample when it's duplicated just became like the cheat code for me when I didn't understand music theory. And now I know a little bit. So if I'm composing something myself, I can make the bass line for it. But if I'm trying to match something up on a sample, nope, not happening.
Oh, that's totally fair. I've always been a sucker for the electric bass, but that's just because of, playing it all the time.
No, and that makes sense. I like a good old like upright. The Keybase plugin is another one. Is just like fire. Like that one was an absolute banger.
Was that the keyboard looking one?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, I used to have that. That was
like it was
pure
a free,
bliss.
and it was a free plugin no less. Like that's crazy.
Price is right, mother truckers.
Like these plugins, these electronic instruments that you use, that's kind of almost sampling it in a sense too, is it not? Using a pre-recorded sound. This is controversial.
Sort of. I myself would never classify using a VST as sampling per se if you're composing something. However, you could then, shouts out to 2 Cole, who uses VSTs to create samples and then send them to us. Hint hint, wink wink, nudge nudge. Cole,
Beauty.
come on, we're waiting.
Yeah.
Oh, you beauty, let it come.
We need it for a future episode.
We do, but so like to that extent, I would not consider using a VST sampling if you're just composing a beat. However, if you're using it for the purpose of making samples or like a loop pack, then even then, no, you're not sampling anything. You're going to eventually get sampled, but even that, I don't know if I consider those sampling. If you go and download a loop pack from Drum Broker, are you sampling if it comes in a zip folder with 30 loops in there? That's not sampling. You have samples, but are you technically sampling?
Yeah, I think there's a difference there.
That's a tough call because like you got to listen to them and you still have to find the chunk that you want. So this is where it gets a little bit blurry. Like
The lines are blurred.
What is sampling?
Sampling is the hunting for sounds, for samples, for noise, for loops. So, I mean, to an extent, sure, you're sampling. But even then, it's like, okay, cool, I'm clicking through a YouTube playlist that's named Dope Hip Hop Samples. You're digging for samples in that regard. Like, you're e-digging.
Crate digging, e-digging, those are cultures all in its own.
I'm of the mindset that it doesn't matter where the sample comes from. And it all depends too. I'm not trying to impress other producers with my craft necessarily. Like, I'm just making beats to make beats for me. If I sell a couple of tapes, sweet, awesome. If it leads to a merch sale, cool. But at the end of the day, it's an outlet for me. So where I get my samples
100%.
from is wherever I get my samples from. And if it's dope and it resonates with me, that's what's most important.
Segue into my next question. What are some unique or unexpected sources you've sampled from? Cal, you first.
Oh, my personal favorite as of late has just been this record I found, and it's just entitled China, and it's all Chinese wind instruments.
Nice.
And it's such a gem to listen to. You'll find the weirdest things on there, but like, oh, it's nothing but good times. And aside that, honestly, orchestral jazz has been another go-to lately.
I like it.
Like, I want the full strings, I want the horns going, I want a full band. That's what I look for.
I love it. You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
70s pornography.
Stop.
For real.
Oh my god, my hero.
Okay, well, this is going in our next Instagram reel.
Absolutely it is. But for the specific reasons that the film score to a lot of those was so funky and just full of flavor that you couldn't not sample a bass line from there. And then on top of that, I threw in the vocal sample from the Little Rascals as well, where he's like, I whipped out my lizard. And then boom, in drops the beat.
Well, I knew you liked it dirty. I didn't realize you liked it that dirty. That grimy.
This brings me back. I might have to do this again, but that would probably be the most like
Unique or weird.
Yeah, definitely the most weird place that I've gotten a sample from. And then on top of that, like there was some weird little like moans and stuff that I was able to like incorporate through the beat that just made it even more humorous and fantastic. As of late, I mean, cassettes, movies. I find with like the convenience of e-digging, a lot of that uniqueness is kind of lost now. Where when I was first starting, I'd sample from VHS. There's a cool little trick you could do on VHSs where if you only plugged in one of the RCA cables into your sampler, it would only pick up the film score and not the audio over top of it. So you could get some really, really dope samples like that, and they would record into your sampler in mono, which is even better. And then boom, you got fire sample that nobody really has because not everybody was savvy to this technique.
That's genius. Like genuine genius right there.
That's a perk of growing up in the late 90s and making music in the early 2000s is you had access to plenty of DVD or VHS tapes and you could work it like that.
Man, I missed out so much just by being into the dirty metal side back then.
This could apply
That would
now.
have been fun. Oh, exactly. The world's my oyster at this time going forward.
That would be, yeah, so that would be the most weird or unexpected source that I've ever sampled from.
Can you share one of your favorite samples you've used in one of your tracks?
Nope. Nope.
Snitches get stitches.
That's right. We're not sample snitching over here. No, honestly, at this point, because everything is so readily accessible, you can.
Maybe any
have
samples
no
you've
problems.
cleared?
I'm gonna edit this out. This is incriminating. I refuse to be a part of this conversation at this point.
All right.
Not.
Well, what are your thoughts on the legal and copyright aspects of sampling in the music industry?
I'm gonna plead the fifth.
I'm not very law savvy, to be quite honest.
I feel like don't copy, but I feel like if you can take something and be inspired by it and like really like change it into something that's your own, like that's just art, inspiring art to a degree, but you shouldn't be like getting rich off of other people's.
But even then, so like where where does the like where does it end? So like I understand, like if I go and I'm a fan of loops. So like I've said before, if I can find a loop, I'll make my own drums. If I can make it sound dope, cool. Sometimes you just gotta respect the loop. Like you can't chop it. It sounds amazing as it is. Sometimes you just need a dope 4 to 8 bar loop, minor changes, some dope drums underneath. Cool. That should be that song goes big. You're getting fucking flagged for copyright infringement if you don't clear it. But if you go and you take a drum loop, for example, we'll say impeach the president because we've spoke about it earlier. If you take that same drum loop and you chop the kick out, you chop the hi-hat out, you chop the snare out, delete the original loop from your file, and you just play those drum sounds over, they're one shots at that point, but they came from a record. So what do you have here at this point? It gets a little bit blurry when you get in that regard. Sounds are a bit different. Like if you're going and you're, like I said, you're taking a loop and you're taking half a bar here, half a bar here, half a bar here, half a bar here, you're still creating something with somebody else's intellectual property. I myself have never cleared a sample. And again, maybe
Somebody call the police.
Yeah, listen, man, if I go down, y'all are fucking going down with me. So
I'm coming.
but in the past where I've worked with artists and they understood that the bulk of my production is sample based, we did a full project together. We all 100% agreed, put it in writing. If there's a sample clearance issue that comes out of this, we're all splitting it. It's going 3 ways. More often than not, you get slapped with a cease and desist first.
It was sad. Like I recently saw in a dumpster where a bunch of like old vinyl records were just like disposed of. They weren't worth anything. No one wanted to buy them. So they're just thrown out. And I'm like, how much of that could have been used to create new music, but because it's useless to somebody, like if you take something like an old record like that and you do something with it, like I think that's a great way of like honoring the music that was.
Sure is.
And that's part of
how
the
I got
culture
Swan
around
Lake.
it. Yeah. But is it fair that the, whatever old jazz album from the 60s or 70s doesn't, like, they're not getting royalties on that?
But are they alive?
Are they alive? Like, did they even make it big? Because like they were pumping, vinyl records out and it's peak,
Devil's
I've got
advocate
one.
here. Devil's advocate here, though. Even if, like, are they not getting royalties? Are they getting royalties? Were they generating royalties before? Are they dead? Should the estate not be entitled to something then at that point?
You would think so.
Like, you would think so, right? But once again, if you're chopping something up to the point that is not even recognizable and you're not clearing the sample, you're probably not going to get flagged for any type of like copyright strike on YouTube or TikTok, SoundCloud, wherever people find music from now. You're probably not. And that's the flip side of it, because you can just go on Splice, grab a loop that 1,000 other people have used and already uploaded to Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, whatever shiesty distributor you prefer. And I'll forever throw shade. Fuck all of them. And then because so many people have already used it, like it's become the convenience of digging. And it's like, okay, cool. Does anybody clear those samples? No.
You can literally generate a license from Splice in 2 seconds. It's stupid.
You can, and
They
it's
just-
crazy because it also...
It's a blanket email.
It is a blanket email, but it also fucks over a lot of other producers, because YouTube doesn't recognize that you have that license for that beat because you weren't the first person to do it. SoundCloud doesn't recognize it because somebody beat you to the punch. So it's like, at that point, why would you not just go the other route and, like I said, not potentially clear it or find something else? But I will tell you right now, to go all the way back to your question, Whitley, one of my favorite samples to flip and reflip every so often is Runaway
I need more context.
by Billy Joel.
Mr. Joel.
Yes. That's one of my favorites. It's got a soft spot in my heart, and I'll forever love flipping that every so often.
Well, I think that's really cool. Like, I'm just dabbling into like beat making. Like, I am very much a novice. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I find this all very fascinating, just the culture behind it and the techniques behind it and how deep it actually goes. Not just in the lo-fi genre, but, you know,
In general.
in general. And how influential it's been on the world and of music.
It really has. Some of the other places that I've found samples are like TikToks or like Instagram reels. Like sometimes there's just something really, really cool in there that you gotta snag. Look at Funhouse off of Cookies for Breakfast, and I got that snippet in there. It's more for just comedic purposes sometimes. But I got the little girl that's like, "Can I pet that dog?"
I love that
Can I pet that
Can I
dog?
pet that dog?
It's like
That's adorable.
there's so many avenues that have opened up, and I just wanted to double back and mention that really quick about unique or like weird sources as well. And again, if you're sampling those, are those people getting royalties? Do you have to clear those?
It's a weird one. I was curious myself because I had this album. I've tried to figure out, like, you know, I'm looking into it. I'm like, let's just see what I'd have to do to clear the samples from this record. But here's the fun part. The record company doesn't exist anymore, and it's from the 50s.
Yep.
So, like, I'm like, I don't know. Googling names, nothing pops up. No anything anywhere. So you're like, how do you clear it then?
You would need at that point like some sort of musical lawyer or somebody with the expertise.
Yeah, because that's a whole conundrum in itself.
That's a lot of footwork to do just to release a record.
Well, here's another question for you that just came to mind. What are the differences in like sampling a vocal versus an instrumental?
In what regard, I guess?
I guess like what do you find more challenging to do, I guess?
Vocals. Tracks with vocals.
100%.
Because sometimes you want the instrument, but you can't get around the vocal, which you can now because pretty much every DAW comes with some sort of stem separation software at this point. So you can get the meat and potatoes of what you really want. Fuck, I'm getting old. I've never said meat and potatoes before. But you can get what you really want. But prior to that technology being available, sometimes you really heard a dope sample, there was vocals over top and you just couldn't get around it. Or vice versa, you heard a really dope vocal that would have made an amazing vocal chop, but there's a sound underneath it that you just don't like.
It's a pain in the royal butt.
Can be.
That's fair.
I mean, even the stem separators nowadays don't even do a perfect job. It's frustrating.
It definitely
same point.
can be. You just recently got the MPC stem separation. How is that?
It's been okay. I can't honestly say I've used it a lot just because you gotta toss the MPC into controller mode right now
Oh, okay.
because it's only available on the PC.
So essentially, it would be just as convenient for you to open up Ableton, do stem separation, and then whip it into the MPC with what you want.
I've been using Serato samplers still instead.
See, man, and like that was a game changer to me. Sometimes, like you said though, when you do the stem separation, it doesn't do as good a job as we may want, but sometimes also it gives it that little bit of like just weird texture, flavor, grit, and it ends up working out okay.
You toss some drums on it and it's usually fine. Drums fix everything.
That's very, very true.
Hey, quotes to live by, people. Drums fix everything.
Can drums fix my
And
life?
that's a little finer thing.
Drums can fix your life, sir.
But Whitley, you were able to segue into something else really quick before we kind of got on the topic of stem separation.
Man, where was I? Okay, what if you could, you know, if you don't have to worry about like copyright legal things, like you could sample anything you want. Is there something that you've always wanted to sample but you know you couldn't?
Yes. If I was in that position where maybe say I was a much bigger producer or I had landed a placement with an artist that was going to use this, and money wasn't an issue. I knew 100% it was going to get cleared. It would probably be Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson.
Oh, that's beautiful. I personally am gonna just hop right on the ABBA train.
Ooh,
I
that'd be
love
good
sampling weird disco. Like, give me some Mamma Mia or something. Cause like I've used it before, and I will use it again. But I would love to legally be able to use it.
Uptown Girl as well is another one that I would like to sample.
I was not expecting those choices from you guys, can't lie.
No, like
Sorry,
but
we've got class.
it's
No kidding.
those are the artists that are typically going to cost you a ridiculous amount of money in order to sample them. You look at Breathe by Fabulous, sampled Crime of the Century by Supertramp, and they took 100% of the publishing
Yes,
in order
they
to clear
did.
that sample. Just Blaze and Fabulous made $0 from that specific song. However, it was the lead single off of that album, and it was a massive success. That was at the time where Fabulous was on his come up, and it was one of those situations where it was 100% worth it for them to give up 100% of that in order to make more off of what they did, because the single was such a huge success. Can I Kick It by A Tribe Called Quest is another example. They had to give up 100% in order to clear that. So you think about it, it also propelled them to the level that they got to. So sometimes the risk is worth the reward, and in those situations they had a label behind them, so they were able to give that up. But if I had the money, that's the avenue I would go, is a song like that.
I get your
I love
reasoning
it.
behind it. That's totally fair.
Because I can sample anything else and just not, hypothetically speaking, clear it. Or I sample something from TrackLib and I clear it with my monthly membership anyway. So those are my two options. But just clear your samples, kids.
Yep. Follow the laws. Respect authority.
Respect the laws of sample clearance.
Okay. Well, as we wrap up here, I just want to ask each of you, what advice do you have for aspiring artists and producers who want to just get started with sampling? Like if they're new to this whole, like me, this whole concept, like what's some newbie advice you can give us?
Fuck around and
YouTube's your
find
best
out.
friend.
Fuck her. Sorry, what was that, Kappa?
I said YouTube, man.
YouTube.
There's so much YouTube and there's so much fucking around to find out. You could just have a million hours of joy.
It's true. It's like FAFO doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It's one of those instances where the more you fall on your face in this specific scenario, the more you're gonna learn.
Oh, it's gonna suck at first too.
100%. It always will.
It sucks so
Always
hard.
does.
It's so hard.
But what hasn't sucked that isn't worth it?
It's true. That's why I keep trying. Keep watching the videos.
You got the support of an entire little lovely community behind you, bud. We'll make sure you're wonderful.
I know, I'm blessed.
Hashtag blessed.
And that's a little finer
Hashtag.
thing.
A little finer thing.
It's
Community.
a little finer thing.
Community is a little finer thing.
I don't know. To me, sampling is just like, it's what the art form came up off of. It's how everything started. It's what got hip hop going in the first place. So who am I to take away from that? I'm going to continue to maintain my roots. That's not to say I don't like composed records. Some of my favorite songs have no samples in them. Some of them do. But at the same time, you got to stay true to it. While we're on the topic of sampling, and before we wrap this up, I couldn't, in good conscience, close out this episode without mentioning probably the sample that stayed under wraps the longest in the new age of technology and people digging and being able to share samples and where they came from and where they may have originated from. But the sample to Shook Ones Part 2 by Mobb Deep stayed hidden for 20 plus years before somebody finally figured it out.
That's really impressive.
That is.
It's actually crazy. There's a video of, I think it's DJ Jazzy Jeff doing a DJ set. He leads into it by playing the original. Nobody is catching on to this except for one person in the very front row. And that person was Questlove, of all people. And he
Of
went
course it was.
absolutely nuts as soon as he happened to catch on to it. But the way that it was manipulated, maneuvered, and processed, man, blows my ever-loving mind some days, man. Like, you want to talk about an absolute classic? Shouts out to Havoc for that one, man, because that stayed hidden for, I mean, that song came out in 94. So what are we now? 04, 14, 24. That shit stayed hidden for at least 25 years.
How?
That ain't
How?
happening nowadays, man. That ain't happening nowadays.
Put it into Shazam. It'll figure it out in a second.
And
Man, have you ever Shazammed something and it like comes up and it's totally not the song you're listening to because it's the sample from something else?
all the fucking time.
All the
All
time.
the time.
Can't get away with nothing.
Yeah, no, sometimes you'll Shazam something and it's not what you want at all. Not even close.
Shazam's the sample police.
The biggest sample snitch of all time, man. Just imagine all these like record execs just sitting there on SoundCloud with their Shazam out trying to make
Oh
a
my
couple
God.
bucks, sending out a cease and desist order. Those fucking assholes.
No, it's AI doing it. There ain't
Yeah.
people getting paid for that.
Shout out to
AI.
What are you talking
Bandcamp.
about?
Shout out to
got the
Bandcamp for
computer.
still being a real one and not having any of that technology to catch us samplers.
That's why it's so
Thank you,
underground.
Bandcamp.
Shout out to Bandcamp, man. We don't need no Spotify AI technology. Get out
Love
of
you,
here.
Bandcamp.
We love Bandcamp over here. Shouts out to Bandcamp. Shouts out to... It's that time of the week. Shouts out to, or in other words,
Artist recommendation.
thank you, Whitley.
Me? You want to know what I want?
Oh,
I
you're
want to know
making
what
Cal
you
start?
think. I always pick on Cal for some reason.
I know. We all want to hear
Why
him talk
not?
more.
I'm sorry, but my voice
The ladies
is so
want
splendid.
it.
It costs an extra. Of course they do. It's not my fault I'm beautiful. It's my mom's. But we're gonna go right over to that little foot-looking place called Italy. I got this buddy Venux over there. He makes a very, honestly, from like lo-fi to almost trap style beats. I've done a song with him too back in, like last year or the year before. But one of my personal favorites, it's just about a minute long little beat, and it's Sotto Sopra? That's my Italian language right there.
I like it.
But my God, that man is he's a beautiful human being. I think he's only like 18 or 19. He's a young little guy, but he makes some really solid music.
Whitley.
Okay, I'm gonna leave the genre of lo-fi just a little bit here with mine.
Nope, not allowed.
I'm doing it anyway.
That's not a little finer thing.
because
This
it
is not a
ties-
little finer thing.
This is not a low-finer thing, but it
Let it be.
But it is because it ties into this whole art of sampling. I'm going
Bring it on.
DJ Shadow.
Fire.
In particular,
Sorry.
like
Sorry.
he's like the crate digger god. I'm not
He's
sure.
definitely up there. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the whole introducing.
I was just about to say introducing. That was the first album completely sampled. Guinness Book of World Records 2001. And like the amount of equipment he used for that album, like, and I love trip hop, and I feel like trip hop and like lo-fi are very go hand in hand kind of styles. Like that is such an influential, iconic album. Favorite song, Midnight in a Perfect World. Love it.
Is that the one with the it's got the Portishead sample, right?
I'm not sure.
Oh, Portishead.
I'm sure it is.
Oh.
I'm gonna look at it afterwards.
But the
I'm
whole
sure it is.
album is just made from samples. Every song is made from samples, and some of these songs, you know, they're not like lo-fi tracks where they're like, you know, 2 minutes, maybe 3 at best. Like some of these are, you know, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. You know, how he had an ear for these things and like put these random pieces together to create such a beautiful song, album, everything. Like check him out, DJ Shadow. He's a legend.
Absolute legend. My artist recommendation this week goes to 2 artists who just released a project together. O'Ricky Beats and Impression just recently put out their collaboration project called Spirits. It's available on Bandcamp. I had to purchase it because I seen one of the physical copies of the beat tape itself came in the style of a cigarette pack. So right away.
Oh, no way.
Yes, amazing. So right away there, I was like, ooh, custom tape with really cool packaging. Absolutely, I'm there. And then
Yeah.
once I got the pre-order that came out last week on April the 4th, man, the album is amazing. So head on over to O'Ricky on Bandcamp or Impression and check out some of that. Whitley, not gonna pick on Cal this time. Where can our listeners find you at?
You can find me on Instagram, Bandcamp, at Whitley360. If you want to check out my radio show, Lunar Lounge, just check out my Instagram. There's a link tree to that, or you can check out the cjtr.ca website. Just look for Lunar Lounge under the show listings. You can also tune in from 11 to midnight live online on Thursday nights.
Wow. Air horn. Cal, where can our listeners find you?
Easy peasy at Cal Kappa on basically everything except for Twitter, because I don't like Twitter. F that place.
You mean X?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. X ain't gonna give it to me. Sorry, guys.
Papa Musk ain't getting me.
No, sir. No, with his electric cars trying to steal my truck driving day job.
Yes. I feel like when I do the air horn sound, I feel like Bo from the TV show Superstore. That's all right. That's all right with me. Have you seen? Have you
dude.
seen?
I love that, dude.
It's so good.
Wah, wah, wah.
It's so good. And you can find me on social media, Crookedfoot Lo-Fi, crookedfoot.lo-fi on Instagram, Crookedfoot Lo-Fi on Bandcamp. And don't forget to follow at the Low Finer Things on Instagram. Find us on YouTube and SoundCloud as well at the Low Finer Things. Follow us,
And
stay subscribed, catch us, stay up to date, all that good stuff.
And that's a low finer thing.
Whitley, give us an air horn before we sign off.
My best air horn. Wow, 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 wow.
Yes!
Yes, we did it.
Don't you dare
Reminds me of
sample
the-
that.
I should.
Oh my god.
Yes.
No.
You're screwed now, bud.
Oh.